Hey everybody, how's it going? As you all know, I do like electric bicycles, and the good news is that it looks like the state Senate approved making them legal by a 56-6 vote margin. It also looks like the second piece of good news is that the state assembly voted in favor of them being legal by a 137-4 vote margin. 137-4. Unfortunately, the bad news is that Andrew Cuomo won re-election for governor. So what Andrew Cuomo did is completely ignore the landslide 56-6 and 137-4 in favor of them being legalized and vetoed it, as you can see over here. Electric bikes and scooters will stay illegal in New York thanks to Governor Cuomo, citing the lack of mandatory helmet requirement and other safety concerns. A mandatory helmet requirement is something that could have been edited into this bill in 10 seconds. But as you can see, this is not about safety. It's never been about safety. If it was about safety, they would actually be looking at the statistics that show here's the amount of injuries from electric bicycles in the city, here's the amount of injuries from motorized cars in the city, which is like this, and they would make cars illegal because cars are far less safe than electric bicycles, objectively speaking, just from injury and police statistics. But again, that's not what this is about. What is this actually about? Let's take a look. Bill sponsors told the Post they were willing to negotiate, but Cuomo gave the cold shoulder amid unrelated tensions with Senate sponsor Jessica Ramos of Queens. And over here, it says Cuomo voiced support for legalizing them in the past, but soured on the bill after it was criticized by one of its co-sponsors earlier this year. This is the reality of how New York City politics works. You can have such widespread support for a bill that the people want it. The state legislature says 137-4, let's go for it. But if the governor doesn't like you, meh, GTFO. This is why when Larry Sharpe was running his campaign for governor, he used to refer to Cuomo as the king and say you have to kiss the ring in order to get something done in the city. This is also part of what happens with Amazon moving here with the new headquarters. To be clear and state my biases up front, I was not the biggest fan of AOC as a politician, didn't vote for her, didn't like her. But when she was criticizing the idea that giving this tax break to Amazon would bring more jobs to the city, one thing that I was not looking at because I was biased was one of the things that Scott Galloway pointed out, which is that if you look at the jobs trajectory of how many people they're hiring now, and if you look at the trajectory of how many jobs they wanted to bring to the city, we're actually on point to have all those jobs show up without them building their headquarters here and without giving them a tax break. Now, so in this one particular instance, Cuomo and de Blasio were dumb, or as Scott Galloway would say, the worst poker players of all time. And one thing that happened here is they never admitted they were wrong. They just decided, screw everybody who criticized my policy. I'm going to make life hard for you. And that's what we're getting at here. Regardless of whether you like or dislike the politicians in question, there is a serious problem in New York City politics whereby if the governor or the mayor don't like you, they will shit can your legislation, even if that legislation has over 95% support. Again, we're talking 137-4 here. That is ridiculous, overwhelming majority support for it. They'll just crap it. And if Jessica Ramos wants to be on the show and discuss how this works, feel free to email me, lewis@rossmangroup.com. I'd love to hear exactly how petty they were when telling you that this bill that's 137-4 is not going to get passed because you criticized me and you were mean to me. It's just, it's sad. And if you look at the criticism, it wasn't this type of YouTube comment, vitriol, hate-filled crap. It was very mild-mannered, proper political speak saying, I disagree with you kind of thing. And this is the thing that's kind of sad. So let's just go over the reasons I find this to be particularly reprehensible. The first, if we go to a red state, a place where a lot of the voters are going to believe that climate change is not really something to care about. It's just some kids are bitching about and protesting about that they just want to change our way of life and destroy the economy for no good reason. In that red state, I can take my electric bike with zero emissions, very efficient, and ride it anywhere I please without getting in trouble. But if you come to this super hyper progressive city where people march about climate change, politicians campaign on climate change, and try to ride your electric, no emissions, efficient electric bicycle around the city, it will be taken from you and you'll get fined $500. I never want to hear Andrew Cuomo's administration ever campaign on climate change again. Because you're making this stuff up. When you talk about safety and a helmet requirement, you could legitimately edit this into the bill in 5 minutes of negotiating. The reality is that you didn't want to negotiate because you were butthurt because you didn't like the politician sponsoring the bill. The second thing that's aggravating here is if you just look at how difficult it is to get around in the city. I can run to my apartment in between 39 to 44 minutes, depending on how in shape I am at the time. If I'm doing my cardio, 39 minutes. If I didn't do my cardio, stayed at work too late for 3 months, 44 minutes. If you're trying to get home around 4 or 6 o'clock from my store to here and you're driving, it's going to take you 40 minutes to an hour. I could actually run home faster than rush hour traffic will get me here over the bridge. It's sad, but it's true. Now, when it comes to the train will take sometimes, in a good day, 20 minutes, most of the time 30 minutes, a lot of the times recently 40 minutes because it doesn't run as regularly as it used to. It often breaks down. It gets stuck a bit between the stops and you can't get off like a bus because it's underground. If you take the F train, you're used to this train will be heading back to Stillwell Avenue before being a Manhattan-bound F train. You're used to the fact that the trains never work. It'll take you a long time. If I take my electric bike to work, it takes me 11 minutes and 10 seconds. 15 minutes if I'm really driving slow that day. So even if there's ridiculous rush hour traffic, the worst rush hour traffic, I ride my bike, and the moment the rush hour traffic comes in, I go on the side of the road, and I take the bike lane, and I'm home. Or if there's no bike lane, I just go on the side of the road, and I just go past the cars. Because even if I'm only going at 15 or 20 miles an hour, that's a lot faster than the 0 that you're going in rush hour traffic. And this is an amazing way to get around. It's also an affordable way to get around. When they say, people are going to go, why don't you just get one of the other electric scooters that's legal? Okay, if you want to get a gas-powered used scooter, you're paying about $1,200 to $1,500. Again, gas. We're supposed to pretend we care about climate change, right? And if you're getting one of the electric ones, like the electric Vespa, something like $7,000. The legal electric scooters cost way more, and they're also much less practical when it comes to carrying payloads. They're meant to carry 1 or 2 people, in a nice little luxury scooter. They're not meant for, I'm going to carry 15 food deliveries on this thing. They're not set up that way, and they cost a lot more money up front to get. So let's just talk about the money aspect then. Look at what it's like to be a restaurant owner in the city. One of the things that Jessica Ramos points out, as well as the article, is that the people that are mostly affected by this are the food delivery workers, and the article also mentions that that people are looking at this saying that they believe it unfairly targets immigrant food delivery workers. So most of the food delivery workers that you see in New York City are immigrants, and they're the majority of the electric bike users. So when I'm riding my bike, it looks like something for every one electric bike I see that's just a normal dude riding around without food or a backpack with DoorDash and Seamless stuff on it, there's probably 100 people riding it for Seamless, DoorDash, Grubhub, and so on and so forth. So the delivery people are the people that typically don't make a lot of money. So if you're going to say, well, you need to pay a lot more money to get this scooter that we consider legal, you're now placing a barrier to entry to doing the job on a group of people that are paid jack shit to do the job. When it comes to the restaurants, you're also asking restaurants to pay their workers more, but simultaneously make them less productive. Because, as you may know, minimum wage went up recently for restaurants in New York City. This is happening at the same time that Seamless and Grubhub are exploding in popularity, which take a cut out of the restaurant's delivery revenue that used to not be there when you used to just call in your delivery or use that restaurant's website. Grubhub and Seamless also make it a little bit more difficult because they don't pay you out the next day like a standard credit card processor. To my understanding from the restaurants I've dealt with in the beginning, there is a hold period where they're holding your money for quite a bit of time. So we're dealing with, also in addition to that, increasing rents. If you look on Craigslist, month after month after month, rent goes up, up, up. If you want even a tiny apartment, it's getting to be at a point where a tiny apartment is going to cost you $2,000 to $3,000 now to live in. So salaries are going up, but not commensurate with rent. Restaurants are paying much higher fees, which means that they need to figure out how to keep their business viable. And the way that restaurants are finding out how to keep their business viable is by arming their fleet with cheap but sturdy electric bicycles so that they can make more deliveries. And what they're doing is saying, yeah, we want you to pay your people more money, but we're also going to make it illegal for them to utilize the very tools that will make them more productive and better at their job because I don't get along with Jessica Ramos. Fucking great. And now there are elements to this that I will admit I can understand opposition. I thought that there was going to be a lot of opposition in the state Senate and legislature. Honestly, I thought that was where the opposition was going to be. Clearly, it's not. But let's say that we're opposed to this on grounds of safety. Where I can say there are serious safety concerns is the fact that, if we're being honest here, there is a financial incentive to drive like shit. Here, the article says they feel like it unfairly targets immigrant or minority workers. Technically, it will do that because the majority of the delivery people are minorities or immigrants. But I don't think they're being targeted because they are minorities or immigrants. I think they're being targeted, and I may get myself in some shit for saying this, because there is a financial incentive to drive worse, ride your bike worse when you're a delivery driver. I'm saying this as somebody that had their quadricep torn about 3 years ago, as I mentioned on the live channel, from a bike going through a red light and hitting me at about 25 miles an hour. Now, I forget the book I was reading this in. It was some book that was talking about capitalism, free markets, and the criticism and the pros and cons both ways. One of the things it was going into was that people will say, well, if somebody tries to repeatedly screw you over, if a company repeatedly screws people over or does things improperly, somebody else will start a company that doesn't do things that way, or people will decide they don't want to use them. But the counter to that is that there are metrics that people care about and metrics people don't care about. Whatever metrics it is that people don't care about, that's where the corners will be cut. So how does that relate to being a delivery driver or an Uber driver or a Lyft driver? Well, if I'm a Lyft driver and I drive like a maniac all the time, my customers, my passengers will be angry with me. They will give me low ratings. I will not be picked for future rides, and therefore I will be called out of the system. However, that's me not paying attention to the metrics that matter to people. What if I do something a little different? What if I drive like a maniac to get to the customer faster, but then I drive like a normal person when the passenger's in the car? This way, I'm able to get more customers, and as long as I don't get arrested, as long as I don't hit somebody, and as long as a pedestrian that I cut off and almost killed doesn't shoot me or throw something through my window, I'll be ahead of the game. Since the metric of how safely the Uber or Lyft drives to the customer or away from the customer while the customer is not in the vehicle is not a metric that is rated by the customer, they're free to do that however they want. Now, I understand that when it comes to delivery drivers, that there are specific metrics. Did my food arrive quickly? Did my food arrive warm? Did my food arrive in proper condition? So warm and quickly, because they got there quickly, and safely. So if you went over a pothole at 40 miles an hour and the food flips over several times, obviously that's going to aggravate the customer because it's going to look like shit and be a mess. But as long as you don't do that, the customer's fine. The customer who's choosing how much of a tip to give that DoorDash or Grubhub or Seamless person, the customer choosing whether or not to give 5 or 1 stars on Grubhub or Yelp, which will affect repeat business, cares about the condition of the food and how quickly it got there. They don't care if you tore Lewis's quadricep on the way because you went through a red light at 25 miles an hour, nor do they even have knowledge of how well you drove. So that metric is not looked at. So if we were to look at that, because this is an issue, I notice a very clear and marked difference as to how cyclists ride when there is no financial incentive and when there is a financial incentive for getting to the customer or for a place faster. Then there are some proposals we can make. And one of those, I imagine, would be something like this. Hey, okay, here's the thing. We're going to make e-bikes legal, okay? No more fines, no more confiscations, no more BS. In exchange, we need you to drive normally. And we're going to get you in the same trouble we'd get a car in if you drive the way you do. If we saw a car going through a red light, we would give them a ticket immediately. We're going to do the same thing to the bike. If we saw a car going the wrong way down a one-way street, we would impound that immediately. We're going to do the same thing to your bike. Because if you look at how the law is enforced in New York City, everybody here jaywalks to some extent. Everybody here has gone through a red light or gone the wrong way down the road. But there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. Like, am I going to say I've never gone through a red light? No. But when I go through a red light, I'll look to my left, to my right. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I think I can make it before the pedestrian hits me. No, if I see somebody walking, I just don't go. I'm only going to go through the red light if I look to my left, I look to my right, and there's nobody there because it's 1 a.m. on a weeknight. I'm only going to go the wrong way down the road if I turn on my high beams, look left, right. Is there anybody on the road? No. Okay, I'm only going to go half a block, not 6 blocks. There's ways that cyclists break the law, and then there's a super obnoxious ways that they break the law. And I think that one thing that needs to happen is to say, okay, we're going to enforce this the same way we do with a car. Because right now, if a bicycle goes through a red light, there is maybe a 70-30 chance that you don't or do get a ticket if an NYPD officer sees you. Because it's a bike. They figure, it's like a person. It's not a big deal. It's not like they have the potential to do the same damage that a car does if they go through a red light. But I think that if they're going to make electric bikes legal, there just needs to be this understanding that you're going to get in the same shit if you go through a red light that we would for a car. Because while the NYPD, there's again, 70-30 chance you're going to get pulled over if you go through a red light. They use discretion. 70-30 chance you're going to get pulled over if you go the wrong way down the street. They use discretion. With a bike, they never give you that discretion with a car, ever. Because a car is a 2,000 to 5,000 pound object that is much more harmful. That has a much more higher risk of harm, so they treat it that way. And I think that should be the deal. Here, we're going to make electric bikes legal. Deal? But we're going to hold you to the same standard that we hold a car to, regardless of whether there's a license plate in the back. Because when they say, that it's hard to register them or you can't register them or that we don't, just treat, you know what an electric bike looks like when you go down the street. You see somebody not pedaling and the bike is moving. You see a battery, you see a motor. They're obvious. Anybody who knows what they're doing can spot it, and just make that the deal. You're going to get, not that you're going to be treated like a car in terms of you have to be registered and everything like that, just you're going to get treated like a car in terms of I see a bike going the wrong way down the road, we're going to pull you over and we're going to take it from you. Because right now, the way the law works, it's just if we see you on an electric bike and you're obeying the law, we're going to take it from you and fine you $500. That's obviously going a little bit too far. Also, it's also going a little bit too far to just have people look the other way when bikes are clearly doing illegal things that are tearing people's legs apart. What do you think? I think that this is, personally, like in my heart of hearts, I think that this is just Andrew Cuomo is aggravated at Jessica Ramos, and this is his way of just saying you should have kissed the ring. Kiss the ring next time, lady. And his personal way of being petty and getting back at someone who criticizes policies. This is what I've noticed throughout Andrew Cuomo being governor of New York. This is something that Larry Sharpe has mentioned many, many times during his campaign for governor, which I agreed with when he was talking about Andrew Cuomo. And I think it's a genuine shame that people who want to reduce their commute from 45 minutes to 15 minutes while reducing carbon emissions and helping the climate are the people who are going to get fined and have their stuff confiscated, all because Andrew Cuomo is having a hissy fit. Look at that. 137-4 margin. And you vetoed it. 137-4. Are you a governor or are you a dictator? That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something.